UFC Fight Night Vegas 52, Lemos versus Andrade just took place, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my reaction and breakdown to every single fight on the card, and my overall event recap as well. But before we get started with the early prelim opener, I just want to say, I have seen a lot of comments saying stuff like, where are all those people that said this was the worst card ever? This was a very fun card to watch, but it was still the worst card ever in UFC history, potentially. I'm sick of that. The outcomes of the fights on the card do not determine how good the card is before the fight card starts. The quality of the fights on the card determine how good it is. I'm seeing comments everywhere like, where was all those comments of people? The UFC even responded to it on Instagram of like the frog drinking the tea or whatever it was. Like, it's still a terrible card. Do not let the outcome of the fights brainwash you into accepting such low quality fights. Let's start with the early prelim opener of, speaking of low quality fights, Dean Barry versus Mike Jackson. Bit of a mess early on. Dean Barry was smashing him up pretty easily. Mike Jackson was having some success at the start, but Dean Barry started to find his groove, knocked down Mike Jackson badly, started to beat him up really, really badly against the cage. But throughout the fight, there was an eye poke early on, somewhat accidental. There was a groin shot, spinning back kick to the groin. Weird, but it landed to the groin. Whatever, they move on. Mike Jackson continues to fight. Then Dean Barry frames off on the face of Mike Jackson like you would do in a clinch in terms of kickboxing, but they don't have gloves on, so the fingers are going in the eyes, and he just eye gouges pretty badly Mike Jackson. It wasn't like to get ahead. He didn't do it intentionally to foul him. I don't think that at all. A lot of people are saying intentional foul, DQ. I think it should be a no contest. Him not getting the win should be the punishment. You shouldn't just give a win to Mike Jackson. It's not like he was winning the fight. If a fighter is winning and they get fouled and they can't continue, they should be given the win by DQ. If a fighter is losing and they get fouled and can't continue, it should be a no contest, and the guy who fouled them shouldn't get his win. It's not that he should get a loss, he just shouldn't get his win. If you're from behind and you foul someone, you can declare it as intentional. If you're ahead and you foul someone, you obviously don't mean that. Either way, it was a bad foul. I understand why Mike Jackson couldn't continue, no complaints there, but just an absolute mess of a situation. They're probably going to cut Mike Jackson anyway, and now Dean Barry has lost any sliver of hype that he once had. 4-2. I don't even want him back in the UFC himself. So, there you go. 4-2 Dean Barry. 1-1 Mike Jackson to kick off the card. There you go. Moving on. Marcin Prachnio versus Felipe Lins. They gave it to Felipe Lins. It was a close fight. I could score it to Marcin Prachnio. I've actually just been rewatching it right now. I understand why they scored it for Felipe Lins, but, like, technically Prachnio on a points basis arguably should have won that bout, but they ended up giving it to Felipe Lins. I understand. It was too close for me to call it a robbery or anything like that, I guess. So I'm not going to sit here and say it was a robbery because Felipe Lins had the control time. But Marcin Prachnio clearly won the first and, like, you know, almost did enough with the better strikes as the fight went on. But either way, Felipe Lins got the job done with the control time as the fight went on. It was too close to say anything bad about the decision. It went to Felipe Lins. Decent decision, I would say, honestly. If it's that close and there's not much separating the striking, you got to give it to the guy getting the effective grappling moments. So Felipe Lins gets the job done. No complaints there from me. Moving on up the card, Preston Parsons versus Evan Elder. Decent scrap. I didn't even predict this one. I went 0-2 early on the card. I went 5-5 overall. It wasn't a good night of predictions for me, but either way, Preston Parsons looked great. Evan Elder, I had no idea how he escaped that arm triangle. Very, very well done there. Credit for heart and stuff like that. His stock doesn't lower too much. He took the fight on a couple of days' notice. Preston Parsons gets it done. Too big, too heavy on top. Evan Elder just couldn't really scramble out from those bottom positions good enough. Kept giving up mount to Preston Parsons, who was raining down some really heavy shots, and he ended up getting a unanimous decision win. No complaints there about any decision. He clearly dominated the fight start to finish. Good stand-up from both. Parsons was landing some decent shots. Evan Elder was landing some really nice body kicks early on as well that I thought might have played a factor if the fight went on, but Preston Parsons too heavy on top, too dominant in the grappling exchanges. Great sweeps to end up back on top when he was on bottom. Good win from Preston Parsons. He gets the job done and moves on. Moving on up the card. Aori Qileng versus Cameron Else. Aori Qileng first round KO. I said he'd get a first round KO. He got a first round KO. We started off a couple of shots back and forth on the feet. Eventually, Aori Qileng got a takedown against a cage. We ended up grinding against the cage for a very long time. And Aori Qileng landed a couple of decent shots there. But other than that, once they separated back up to the feet again after the first minute or so, Aori Qileng found that body shot. Hurt Cameron Else badly. Landed a couple more follow-up shots to the head and stuff like that. Then found that body shot again. Put down Cameron Else really badly this time. I thought the finish was very sloppy stuff. Like standing back up, find space, separate, land some shots to the body or something like that. Like once a guy's hurt to the body, I don't think you should be trying to take his back and removing the option to even attack his body and then go for a rear naked choke or a TKO to ground and pound. The referee could have stepped in a little bit earlier, I'll be honest, because Cameron Else wasn't intelligently defending himself, and Aori Qileng, I believe, just wasn't doing enough shots in a row for the referee to step in, which is why he didn't. Like, if Aori Qileng would have followed up the first sequence of ground and pound shots with an extra 2 straight away, the referee probably would have stepped in, but he just kept stopping to readjust himself, put the ref in a weird situation. But Aori Qileng has a great performance and gets a first round TKO. Good job. Moving on, I just don't know why people don't just make them stand back up, because if they can't get back up, the fight's over, if they're hurt to the body. So next time you hurt someone to the body, UFC fighter, just separate and make them stand back up. Or Khalil Roundtree the fuck out of them on the ground. Other than that, like, make them stand back up. If they can't get up when the referee asks them to, but within 3 seconds on their own, they're done. So, I don't know. Moving on, up the card, Tyson Pedro versus EK Villanueva. Tyson Pedro, amazing performance. Very patient early on. Eventually got it done. Was chewing up the legs of EK Villanueva. A couple of fouls here and there with the groin shots, but they weren't too bad. EK Villanueva fought through them. Very well done. The first one I didn't even think landed on the groin, but the second one definitely did with a knee against a cage. But Tyson Pedro looked good. He looked sharp. EK Villanueva looked like a fat random guy that they put in a cage against Tyson Pedro. So what do you expect? He couldn't really deal with the leg kicks. Tyson Pedro's leg kicks looked very, very good. Chopped apart the legs of EK Villanueva. Eventually his leg gave out under him towards the end of the first round. Went down, shelled up backwards, and then Tyson Pedro literally put him out cold, actually, with a shovel uppercut. So, great KO victory from Tyson Pedro. Put EK Villanueva out cold against a cage with a good shovel uppercut, but it was the leg kicks before that were doing all of the good work. Moving on up the card, Dwight Grant versus Sergey Khandozhko. I picked Dwight Grant to win by KO. He almost did. Early on in the first, Sergey Khandozhko landed a good punch on him, put him down. He was a little bit off balance. He got back up. He got back to work. And at the end of the first round, Dwight Grant really badly put down Sergey Khandozhko, and I think could have finished him. But again, UFC fighters, he's only been training for this moment for the last 2 decades of his life. So how can you expect him to just separate and make space and get a finish? Instead, he rams his hips into Sergey Khandozhko on the ground to look for half guard position on a guy who's ready to be KO'd and put out cold at the end of round 1. Really interesting decision making from Dwight Grant. Must have Down syndrome, but either way, Sergey Khandozhko makes it to the end of the first round, and then in the second round, Sergey Khandozhko, way more technical. He was arguably winning the majority of the first round anyway, without the knockdown, just in terms of the exchanges they had. The body shots were good, the body kicks were good that he was landing as well. Landed a couple of decent leg kicks, 1 or 2 or something like that, but they rarely threw kicks in this fight. It was more of a boxing exchange. In the second round, how has Sergey Khandozhko only got 1 knockdown awarded to him? He literally got like 3. They've only scored 1 knockdown for Sergey Khandozhko. I don't know why that is, but either way, he got a good lead hook to the liver with a left hook. Left hook upstairs afterwards, put down Dwight Grant, who got back up, then got put down again. And then that's how it went, really. Very good win by Sergey Khandozhko. Extremely good performance. The stoppage was whatever. Worst time to step in when a guy's getting back up to his feet. But when Dwight Grant's just still shelling up when the referee stopped it and doesn't even realise, that's when you know it was a good stoppage. So I agree with the stoppage. It's just never a good visual when a guy's getting back up to stop it when a guy's getting back up, because he's attempting to defend himself, you know what I mean? But either way, Sergey Khandozhko, amazing win. Fight is a bit like Piotr with like less of the skill, but very composed, very patient, took some good shots, came back, and was way more efficient with his finishing ability when the time came for it. So good job, Sergey Khandozhko. After the first round, when Dwight Grant knocked him down, I said bet on Sergey Khandozhko as an underdog here, and everyone did, or not everyone, but some people did and made some money on it. So I could just see Dwight Grant gassing out completely. So, Khandozhko gets it done. Good job. Moving on up the card, Jourdain Wright versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I went with Jourdain Wright stupidly. He had a couple of decent moments early on, was chewing up the legs of Marc-Andre Barriault, landing some really good knees in the clinch as well. But then again, just like Jourdain Wright does, Marc-Andre Barriault lands a couple of decent punches with a single collar. Not really too powerful whatsoever, but it turns Jourdain Wright into a downy with an extra chromosome. So he starts shooting for takedowns, overexerting all of his energy. I mean, even if he did win those takedowns and ended up in top in a few of those situations and didn't get guillotined in the first round, he'd be puffing for air in a second. The energy put into these takedowns, it's never worth it if you have to try that hard. And the second part of the takedown in the second half of the first round, he stuck his head in a guillotine, would not take it out of the guillotine, and chose that whilst his head was in a perfect guillotine position, to go for a single leg with his head in a guillotine, and then take him to the ground and end up in full guard on top with a head still in a fucking guillotine. None of the time fighting the hands whatsoever, just pushing down on the head of Marc-Andre. Good guillotine by Marc-Andre Barriault, the start of an all-French-Canadian guillotine fest on the card. I was wrong again. Moving on to the main card. Lando Vannata versus Charles Jourdain. Oh my god. I haven't laughed that hard at a UFC fight in a very long time. Lando Vannata gets taken down early on, shows really good scrambling ability on the ground and works his way back up to his feet, but a great takedown early on from Lando. Lando was looking good on the feet. Leg kicks, chopping up Charles Jourdain, teeps to the body, sending him backwards all over the place. Looked good early on, landed a good 1-2, I believe, in the first round as well. And then eventually, they went to the ground again, and Charles Jourdain latched up a guillotine, and Lando did not fight the hands. Let it sit in there. People are too comfortable trying to pass over the legs whenever someone goes for a guillotine. You've got to fight the hands as well, especially in the first round when there's no sweat. Like, that's the best time to get one. Yeah, and he just let his head sit in a guillotine for too long. Charles Jourdain, it wasn't a one-armed guillotine like people are talking about. He had a one-armed guillotine going, but he finished it with two arms, so it's not a one-armed guillotine. But he was trying to go for a power guillotine with one arm, but eventually to tighten up the gap and to make it a bit more of a squeeze, he went with the two-arm guillotine, and really good win by Charles Jourdain. The funniest part was, this was maybe the most humiliating loss in UFC history. Not only does the guy beat you in good fashion with a guillotine in the first round, but he genuinely pantsed him in the middle of it as well. Like, he took his trousers down. He took his pants down in the middle of the guillotine. And the image at the end, I wonder if anyone's got a cool picture of this. I'm sure someone on Instagram will post it if they do. But there'll be an image online over the next couple of days, I'm sure, of Lando, like, standing up after realizing he's lost with sorrow on his face, with his pants down by his ankles. And I really want to see that picture. Don't ask why. Hey, yo, pretty sus, I know, but I just think that'd be fucking hilarious, in all honesty. I just thought it was hilarious. Sorry. I love Lando. Big fan. Big fan of Jourdain. I picked him to win this fight as well. But that is the funniest thing I've seen. Him standing up like, oh, God, it's all over, and his pants are by his ankles, like, that is embarrassing. And the referees helping him pull him up. Like, it was just a mess. And I laughed so hard. Moving on. Up the card. Maycee Barber versus Montana De La Rosa. Maycee Barber looked really good. I'll be honest with you guys. Maycee Barber looked actually pretty good at fighting. People are going to call this fight boring. I'll see what the Instagram comments are on that fight, actually, just to make sure. She called her fight boring. Let me see what people are saying about the fight. They didn't post anything about the fight. Jesus. No one posted. UFC didn't even post about the fight. No, wait, they might have done. Let me refresh. No, they didn't at all. Okay, well, sucks for Maycee Barber. Either way, I assume people are going to call it boring. She actually had a really good wrestling game, that fight. Really good technique, really good wrist control, really good work against a cage. That was one of the more entertaining clinch fights against a cage I've seen in a very long time. People are going to trash on her because they don't like her. I get it. She's a bit annoying. But it was a very good performance against a good opponent in Montana De La Rosa. And she won it pretty convincingly. I gave her every round. I know commentary was saying 1-1, but on damage, I had it 3-0 to Maycee Barber. And she looks really good in the grappling. So, yeah. Not like and subscribe. There's still more card to go. Good win by Maycee Barber, though. We move on up the card to Clay Guida versus Claudio Puelles. Did not expect this at all. I picked Clay Guida to win. I'd seen him in jiu-jitsu competitions at Submission Underground, avoiding submission, scrambling well, ending up on top using good wrestling. But Claudio Puelles, very good submission game. Almost had a triangle early on, turned it into an armbar. Tried to go for like an omoplata at one point as well, but couldn't really get it. Clay Guida had his arm trapped for a while. Ended up on top. I think he should have kept it standing in hindsight, right? But Claudio Puelles latched up a knee bar out of nowhere on the ground. Like, literally had an amazing transition to get the knee bar. And once it was in, you can't be in a knee bar for that long. You can try and be in an arm bar for a bit and maybe fight out of it, or be in a choke for a little bit or a triangle for a little bit and squeeze your way out of it and stuff. But knee bar, you're getting your legs snapped in half. Like, it's tough, you know what I mean? So you got to tap to that immediately, and that's what Clay Guida did. Good job by Claudio Puelles. Was not expecting this at all, so he's massively improving. Because in his fight against Jourdain Levitt, mediocre grappling game, in my opinion. In his fight against Gurgis Maka, sure, he got a finish in the third with a knee bar. Mediocre grappling shown in that fight as well. He has not shown that level of grappling at any point in his career, but now it's all seeming to come together, it seems. A lot more confidence in the ground. Maybe you just can't go to the ground with this guy in round one. As the rounds go on and he gets tired, maybe he's a bit sloppier, but round one, he's got some wicked good submission techniques and a good post-fight speech afterwards. Good job, Claudio Puelles, I was wrong. Moving on the main card and to the main event, Amanda Lemos versus Jessica Andrade. I picked Andrade to win. By late rounds TKO, I thought it'd be a scrap. I thought Lemos would do really well, and Andrade would come back and get a job done on Lemos, who hasn't been 5 rounds before and would gas out. But instead, Lemos was picking her apart on the feet early. Landed a good front kick to the face at one point partially, chewing up her legs early on as well. Lemos was landing some really good leg kicks. She fights exactly like a female Figueiredo would. But Jessica Andrade found her moment, went for a standing arm triangle, and found it. Eventually, she didn't have it. So it was close, but once she changed her grip, I was like, oh, she's got it, because she's got really short arms. So she can get these arm triangles, you know what I mean? You get them short arm squeezes going on. Long arms, there's room to manipulate. You can put a hand in there and get some space. Like, you can't quite get the same squeeze with long arms and stuff like that. But with like a short-armed person like Andrade, you can squeeze and have no space for your opponent to get any air whatsoever. So the first standing arm triangle finish in UFC history, I believe. I've seen people putting them before, like Ryan Spann, Sam Alvey. I've never seen someone put someone away with it. So good job, Jessica Andrade. And you could see it on Lemos's face when she changed. You could see it on Lemos's face when Andrade changed the grip. Lemos really panicked. Like, she tried to get like a last breath in so she could hold it, and that's when you know it's a tight one. So I called it. I said she can actually tap to this, and she tapped to it. Got put down against the canvas. Good win by Andrade. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. This card overall, before I say goodbye, it was okay. It was a great card. I actually give it some good points. Like, it was good prelims. There was a lot of finishes. How many finishes were there? Weird start of the card. Prachnio Philipe Lins was somewhat entertaining. Parsons Elder was entertaining. Aori got a first round finish. Pedro got a first round finish. Khandozhko got a first round finish. Second round. Barriault got a first round finish. Jourdain got a first round finish. Barber Montana was a decent fight. Nothing too fun, but decent. Puelles first round. Andrade first round. So on paper, in hindsight, it is a great card. Weak card, though. Do not let me see any more comments like, lol, to the people who said this was going to be a bad card. It is a bad card. Low quality fights up and down. Disgrace. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. I went 5-5. My worst card this year. Still not negative, though. I will not go negative this year. That's a fact. Toodle pip. Goodbye.